Hello and welcome to the How Do I Manage Objects in Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2013 R2 development environment from Command Prompt. My name is Vyacheslav Babic. I'm a Microsoft Dynamics NAV MVP and I have created this video for you in cooperation with Microsoft and Platan, a Microsoft Dynamics Solution Training Center from Belgium. At the end of this video, you will have seen how to manage objects using simply finsql.exe command line from Command Prompt. The objective of this video is to show how to use different finsql.exe commands from Command Prompt to manage importing, exporting, compiling and designing objects. I'll do this in 3 steps. In the first step, I will introduce the commands for importing, exporting, compiling and designing objects from Command Prompt. In the next step, I will show how to use filtering options with certain commands. And finally, I will show how to manage multi-tenant development environments. So, let's get started with the first step and get to know the commands. First, I will run the command prompt. So I'm going to my start menu and then I'm starting command and then I'm clicking command prompt. Then I will go to the folder where my NAV finsql.exe is installed, which is my development environment. That's program files x86, then Microsoft Dynamics NAV, then 7.1 and then role tailored client. So here if I run finsql, it will run my development environment, but I want to use commands. So the first command that I will introduce is the export object. So to specify which command you want to use, you have to enter command and then equals, so in my case, export objects. For each of the commands you have to specify the parameters. To specify parameters, you have to enter comma and then the parameter name. The first parameter for export objects is file. Here I'm specifying where I'm exporting. So here I will enter the root of my C drive and then objects.fob. I will at this moment open my C drive to show that there is no file there. So it's objects.fob and then I will specify from where I'm exporting. I have to specify the server name. In my case it's lon.svr-svr1 and if you're using an instance then you have to specify the instance name by entering backslash and then the instance name. In my case is NAV demo. Next parameter is database. Here I'm specifying the database name, so it's demo database NAV 7-1. And then last parameter that I'm going to specify is filter because I want to export just a single object. So here I will specify type table and then ID 18 to export just customer table. I will talk about filtering a little bit later, but for now let me just run this command. So when I run this command I get objects.fob and I can verify in my development environment that this objects.fob is my table customer. So here I have exported an object into an FOB file. How about exporting it to a text file? It's the same command. The only difference is that I have to specify the txt extension. So if I enter txt instead of FOB, it will actually export as txt. So if I open this in Notepad, I can see that this is a text file. The next command I'm going to show is import objects. So it's very similar to export objects. The most obvious difference is that the command is not import but export, not export but import. So I'm replacing export with import. And the next difference is that I do not have to specify the filter. Actually, I can specify the filter, but it will have absolutely no effect because importing objects through command prompt does not allow you to filter them. So here I'm going to import a text file. And then I'm going to verify in my development environment that the text file was actually imported. I can verify that because my compiled flag is now gone. This happens because whenever importing from text files, from command prompt or development environment, you always just trample over existing objects and keep them in the uncompiled state. So the behavior is exactly the same as if I click on File, Import, and then import a text file. The next command that I'm going to show is compile objects. So here I'm going to replace export objects with compile objects. And then again I'm going to specify the filter. So I'm compiling my table 18. Right now my table 18 is uncompiled. I will close the development environment, run this command, and then if I go to the development environment, I can verify that this command has actually successfully compiled the objects. The next command that I'm going to show is command design object. So it's a little bit different. So here I will first close my development environment and then I will clear my screen. So instead of specifying command equals design object, I'm simply specifying which object I'm designing. So here I don't have to specify the server name or the database name because it will then connect to the last one. I have to specify just design object and then table 18. So this is basically it. If I run this command, it starts my development environment and it also designs the object that I have specified. It runs the designer directly and immediately. Now that you have seen the commands that you can use with finsql.exe, let's take a look at how to specify filters for exporting objects and compiling objects. When using the export objects or compile objects commands, you can specify filters. By specifying filters, you are narrowing the range of objects which is affected by the command. So back in my command prompt, I'm going to call my export objects command again. Here I'm going to use a different name. It's going to be objects filtered. Sorry, I've made a small mistake. Objects filter.txt. I can specify the filter. So when filtering objects, you can use any of the columns which are available in the development environment. So you can use type and then enter the name of the type. So for example, table, code unit, page, report, etc. You can specify the ID of the object and then specify the number. Also, you can specify the name of the object. So for example, I might want to export all objects starting with C, and then I could use this filter. So for example, if I run that and take a look at what has been exported, I will get quite a large file, but it will actually it's still being generated. So now it's complete. So if I take a look, it's actually all of the objects starting with C. I can verify that just by looking for object and object, and then the next one is customer, price, group, country, region, customer, etc. So you can basically use any text filter that you could use in the development environment itself. Also, you can filter on modified. So for example, modified, and then you can say yes, no, or 1 or 0. The same with compiled. You can use the compiled and then yes, no, 1 or 0. You can use date filters, so date, and then you can use any object which was modified on 23rd of September of 2013, and then sorry, I have made a mistake. It's date. So if I run that, it would export all of the objects which were modified on this specific date. So it's still generating them. Okay. There is a lot of those. So let it actually continue running. The next filter that we can use is the time filter. Again, it has the same format as the development environment. So for example, I can say I want to export objects which are compiled at 12. Also, I can use version list. So here I have version list. Make sure to specify a space between version and list. Also, I can use locked and then specify yes, no, or 0 or 1. And finally, I can specify locked by and then enter the username. So let's actually try exporting type table and then name equals cust and then any. So when I run this, it will generate a file which has any table that starts with cust. Let's take a look at what happens if I import that file. So I'll import this objects filtered. So it has taken the compile flag away. So if I take a look, I will see that these are the tables that have been imported. Again, the same filter can be used with the compile objects command. So if I go back to compile objects and then use the same filter in my development environment, now I don't have anything because it has been filtered on the compiled no, and now all of the objects are actually compiled. So let me go back. As you have seen, you can filter by multiple columns. If you do so, then you have to specify the semicolon in between the fields in the object designer on which you are filtering. Also, what is worth mentioning is that you can use, when using text filters, like for example name, you can say any name that starts with cust, or, and then I will use the pipe character, any name that starts, vend, and then specify it like this. So in this case, what will happen, it will actually not compile, but export objects. It will export any objects which have name that starts with customer or vendor. So if I run that and verify my text file, it is slightly different. If I import that text file now, and again filter or on compiled no, I will see that there is much more objects here, but all of them either start with vend or cust. So again, I'm going to use the same filter with compile objects. And it will again affect all of the objects. So I can take a look and see that, okay, now it is actually compiling the objects, and I can observe the compiling progress just by going to the first row. So this was how to specify filters. As you have seen, the command that you run returns to command prompt immediately, and it's actually executing in the background. And finally, let's take a look at how to call finsql.exe in multi-tenant development environment. When managing development in multi-tenant environments, you normally have to specify the options for the development environment to be able to both run the objects against a specific instance and a tenant, and also to validate any database schema changes, such as fields being deleted from tables that are modified or imported from a fob. What I also have here is a multi-tenant environment with one tenant already mounted, and I have the database, the application database open in my development environment. So what I can see here is that my customer table has a new field. This field has been modified, and it actually includes data in the tenant which is mounted. I can verify that by opening the table and taking a look at the new field column. So if I try to import a fob which would cause a data change, or actually the schema change, because the fob that I'm importing does not contain the new field column, I would get an error, because the server has tried to validate the schema change against the tenant which is mounted, and it fails because this field contains data in it. So I want to be able to manage the same circumstances also when I'm importing from the command prompt. So let me go to command prompt and let me use the fin-SQL, then command import objects. So again, I'm going to specify which file, so it's C and then customer original.fob. Let me make sure that this is the name of the file. So it is. Then I'm going to connect to server name equals lonsvr1 and NAV demo. Database equals demo database NAV app. And then what I'm going to do is specify import action, because I want my files to be my objects to be overwritten if there is any conflict. So here I'm going to specify overwrite. I didn't explain this this parameter earlier. So this parameter actually controls how the object is imported. If there are any conflicts, how they are going to be handled. You can only specify default action, overwrite, or skip. So I'm trying to overwrite this this table which I'm importing, and then I have to specify multi-tenancy options. These options are validate table changes. Here I can specify yes or no. Let me start with yes first. So if I specify yes, it means that any kinds of table changes which would cause a loss would be prevented. If I say no, they would be applied. So next option is NAV server name. Here I'm specifying the server. It's going to be localhost. This is NAV server, and then NAV server instance. This is the NAV server instance against which I'm going to validate any kinds of table changes. So NAV server instance is Dynamics NAV 7.1. Then I'm going to specify NAV server management port at 7045, and then I'm going to specify tenant 1. When I run this command, I would expect my object to be imported, but it is not. Whenever running commands for import objects, export objects, compile objects, or any other command, what you get is a log file which by default is stored within the Rolltail client folder. This log file explains what happened with the command. Did it succeed or did it fail? So here, when I open this naverrorlog.txt, it tells me that this field cannot be deleted because there is already data in this database. This is a tenant database. So what I can try at this moment is change the behavior and say that I want to validate, I want to not validate database changes. So here, instead of validate table changes, I would say no, which would cause my development environment to force a change in the database. So if I run that, let me take a look. So in this moment, what I can see is that the customer table has been imported, and obviously the field was lost. That was all. I hope you liked this video, and please join me in other titles in the How Do I series for Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2013 R2. Bye bye.